Friends, we delve into our final lecture on discernment and looking to the ground and the essence of the world, and what is the essence of the world. The first lecture, we talked about how to ask the Lord questions and how to discern the truth of the answer. Today, we get to the why that is, why the phenomenology of the answer is the way it is, and likewise, deeper into the mystery of joy that we explored last lecture. Symbolism of initiation is what we're talking about today. Symbols of purification, illumination, and union is what that means. We're talking about Aquinas and mysticism, and we're talking about a continuation of the oaths of poverty, obedience, chastity, as they're reflected in that symbolism, but also as they're reflected in the difference between bestial instinct and divine instinct. Here we are, starting with the symbolism of initiation. Symbols of purification, illumination, union, the coin, the cup, the sword, and the scepter. Becoming empty. Pour in spirit, pour in the first wine. That's what we're after. Pour of the falsity of the derivative mixed waters below the firmament. That's what we're after. And so, friends, on we go. And on you go, hopefully, if you're doing the practices of concentration without effort in prayer. And through that, you ascend from consciousness belonging to the worldly, of worldly action, the phenomenal, factical world, or actual world that presences to us in the surface senses. Through that, through the world of formation and the world of creation, to the world of emanation, and finally to its summit, which actually is mysticism. And so it's a matter of 4 degrees, including the summit, because emanation is, well, the top of it is the summit, you could call it, which is he. And it's the 4 degrees of ascent from, firstly, the world of sensual and intellectual imagery, which corresponds to coins, and you'll see in a sec why it does. The symbolism helps us get to grips of what happens in this and what these degrees are. 2, to the world or degree of the destruction or transvaluation of this image. Or you could also call it the wilderness, which corresponds to swords and, of course, cutting, right? The destruction of it. So as to attain to the degree of spiritual poverty which is necessary to become 3, Mary, a receptacle for revelation from above. Let it be with me according to your word, which is the degree which corresponds to the degree of cups. Of course, when we talk about the Holy Grail, what is the Holy Grail? What does the symbol mean? What's the quest for the Grail? It's this. This is the entire Grail quest. They involve themselves in the world looking for it. But the truth is, Mary is the Grail. But what's inside the Grail? The thing that comes after you are empty. It's in the middle of the Grail. You call it the blood of Christ is in the Grail. That's what you're actually after when you're after the Grail. And what's the blood of Christ? The blood of Christ is revelatory action. Mysticism is grace, is the blood of Christ, pierced in his side, pierced by the spear into the soil of facticity. When it bled from him into the world, resurrected, heals the macrocosm with the re-initiation of outside of the eternal, now fully healed the macrocosm. Redeemed at that moment that the blood, but the blood touches the soil, is grace retouching the soil. It's the reconnection of the Sabbath to creation. Thank God. Yes. It's funny when you go through these old terms of phrase, you get to their reality through tradition, really. Thank God. It's not just a turn of phrase. It's not empty. You have well, you have that blood, don't you? It's not empty phrase anymore. The meaning, the being has returned. And so the summit is attained when the cup of consciousness, or the now empty waters, calm waters, crystallized peace waters, which receives the revelation from above at the summit, is transformed. Becoming is by cooperating with revelatory action. One instance of that is the sacred miraculous of grace entering the breath, as I've talked about in other lectures. It transforms into this ladder, into this summit, into this revelatory action. You transform into that, transform totally into revelatory action, as in transform into Christ. Theosis is what this all is. Hesychism is also what it is. Silence, as we'll see. Which is mysticism as well, the summit, the point of potentiality at the top of emanation is another way of seeing it. And it then becomes revelatory action itself, being actively united with the world of emanation. Then the degree of scepters is attained. And the scepter is a symbol of the sacred miraculous. Some call it sacred magic, but of course magic is a bit of a annoying word. So sacred miraculous. Participatory miraculous, rather, is a better way to put it. And it's that of pure creative activity, pure obedience to God. That's all divine instinctivity is. Spontaneous obedience. Passive active. It's also an expansion of the very first thing you learn in concentration without effort, the passive active. And so in this process of purification, illumination, union, even once union becomes possible, purification and illumination continue. The divine breath, faith, is tied up with purification, divine light, illumination, which is hope, and union, which is love. Divine fire, not Heraclitan fire, true fire, the true ground of being. But these things aren't just this, and it starts, the first full step before practices is preparation. That's preparation. What you're doing right now is preparation, watching this lecture. Preparation, purification, illumination, union. But they happen, think about it as a metaphor like this. Purification doesn't stop either. It's like, a good metaphor would be, it's like filling up 3 cups of water, but you have to fill up the first one to halfway before the others start filling up. But once union also becomes possible, the degrees move up. You see, the 3 cups fill from the water of all. So they're ongoing. Saints are still sinners, right? So it doesn't go purification finished, illumination finished, union finished. It's sort of, you get to a halfway point in the first cup, and then the other 2 become more possible, and they all fill up. The becoming and development is ongoing. And so there's something else I wanted to articulate that I can't exactly. We could talk about it right now, because or we might talk about it later, but we're talking about the scepter right now with the 4th, with the summit. What is the scepter? Well, a scepter as a symbol, these symbols help you get a visual, and their combination help you get a visual. Through contemplating them, they help reach towards truth. So it's a nice analogous. It's a nice accentuates the articulation to have it. You could also say it reaches towards an arcana, a higher truth that's beyond the intellect. That's true too, but it depends on the symbol you're actually contemplating. And there's a procedure to that as well. But the symbol of the scepter itself, the symbol of the summit, actually is a purified combination of the other three. The coin becomes a point of concentration, which you do in this process, right? The pillar, the sword becomes a pillar because there's no need to cut it up anymore. It's become a still pillar. And that this is to do with the phenomenology that you experience in this. You become like a pillar. It's a phenomenology of the Angeloi is like that. Or as one saint described it, it's like the soul is eclipsed. Like when the sun when someone stands behind you in front of the sun, when you notice the warmth sort of eclipse behind you, it's kind of like this pillar. So concentrated, like concentration without effort in prayer, like a pillar. So you add the point, you add the stave, which is these two. The coin is turned to a point, the sword is turned into a stave, and a cup, and you add that together, you have a cup, right? Add to that a crown, you've got a scepter. All those three symbols become a scepter. So these three things all happening at once. So you're concentrated, you're a pillar, you're receptive and empty, you're poor in spirit. You add to the top divine will, and you have a will of the mortal and the divine in union, which is the whole point of this process. The scepter is the combination and synthesis of all three of the others. And the first two change, and you'll see, we'll explain how they change right now. So, one, in this process, coins actuality. Think actuality. What's a coin? The way begins in the world of coins. This is the world of the imagery of facts, intellectual constructions, and imagined ideals. Here, consciousness surrounds itself with a world of images. On the one hand, the memories of experiences, and on the other hand, the formula and schemes of the intellect, as well as those of moral imagination, which latter we call ideals or valuation, value. The imagistic of the unconscious you sometimes see in dreams. It's a vivid, valuative power. It has valuative power. When people talk about values and morals, it's a true being in the unconscious. It's a true living in the unconscious, vital living in the unconscious, which are, in a sense, it's more real than the objects of facticity. Because it's closer going to the other way, but that's complicated. But the point is, this zone isn't just some, it's more than just the intellect, is what I'm trying to say. But the point is, that's where we begin. We begin with what we're in modernity. We've got all these things of the first wine, the valuations of the first wine, the valuations of this modern education we're brought into, and we're preparing by this process, the lectures for philosophy and all these things to begin this process to leave the worldly. But we've got all this stuff that's with us in our unconscious, in the way we are, more than, and that all has to be converted. Coins, what are coins? They're converted in to true goods, aren't they? Coin is something that is represents a reality, and in this process it's converted into a true objective, non-arbitrary reality. So the being that we are becomes not only realized, but becomes true realized and objective, not just subjective and arbitrary. And so this world of images is neither reality or illusion, see? It's both. which is the problem of human intellect and the problem of the two worlds. Because there's world and there's world. There's intellect and there's intellect. There's cosmic intellect and there's human intellect. And we have to become cosmic. We have to, and the world has to not become, because there's two principles operating in the world, as we know. And we have to get to the truth of both. And the world is only true because there's such a thing as antediluvian monsters. There's such a thing as an illusory object. So if you're using the criterion of truth of the empiricist, saying, well, the objects of knowledge, if they correspond to the objects of the world, then that's true. It's an image of that. Well, if your idol is that, then you're in big trouble because there's such a thing as an illusory object, a mirage. It, like UFOs reflect radar. That's an antediluvian monster. A wheel creates something from the domain of form, which is the realm of what we're talking about, swords here. It's deeper in the unconscious, the collective unconscious that's actually underneath world is what allows these projections. But we're kind of straying a bit there from what we're talking about. And so this world of images is neither reality nor illusion. It consists of values. Images, value images corresponding to reality, and which are therefore convertible into reality, hence coin. For this reason, coins are its symbol. For just as pieces of money are not themselves board, heating, and lodging, but can be converted into board, heating, and lodging, so do memory images and the formula and schemes of the intellect and moral imagination represent realities, being worths. Worths. So we are, in a sense, worths. So when people talk about values, it's all BS. That's propositions and constructions. But there is, in the unconscious, there are worths, and being, and there's a substance there. There's a power there, and the true power, and the essence it must be converted to is, of course, love. But the worths that may be converted into reality, this is the transvaluation we often have spoken about. And of course, how do you do that? Last lecture and this lecture. But this is what this is and what we always talk about. But now the world of coins, the world of images has a twofold significance. It signifies on the one hand the wealth acquired by consciousness, and on the other hand it signifies the totality of that which must be renounced if consciousness wants to come to spiritual reality. We are becoming true reality, not just a realized arbitrary being that modernity has us as. We're coming to the true spiritual reality, not the false Holy Spirit that is a mirage. It's realized, but not true. We're looking for true realization, true becoming, not spiritual experience, because that can be false realized. And so, but in order to convert money, coin, into real things, in order to buy them, you have to pay. You got to pay. You have to pay your debts for one, but you've got to become poor in spirit. You have to become, in order for the order to possess the kingdom of heaven. You have to be forgiven also. So paying of the debts isn't actually just this process. It's paying, it's becoming poor in spirit through concentration, becoming like a pillar, like an empty vessel, through the oaths of poverty, obedience, chastity. But also, that is also forgiveness. For your Father won't forgive your sins unless you forgive them, and a simple way of doing that is asking the Lord to bless all the people that you believe that have wronged you. Is a great way. Any person that walks past you, that'll get that you're getting rid of all your prejudices, like we talked about last lecture. So that's part of it. But you're seeing how this all comes together. If you watch the last two lectures, you're seeing how it all comes together. These practices, how what it means theoretically. This becoming poor, converting to become real, to become objective, not subjective, to become true. You have to be forgiven. And before you have access to objective consciousness, which is He. But thankfully, since Christ, we can now pray for it, rather than the labyrinthine revenge or atonement before Him, which is on the horizontal anyway. Now we have the vertical. Thank God. This payment, where one divests oneself of one's wealth of spirit, is that of swords. Here the values, images, or coins that one has struck through intellectual, moral, and artistic effort are destroyed. This is what I always talk about, one after another in the same order in which they were formed. You won't necessarily notice that so much, but that is apparently the case. You just notice it's happening. And this is true. So all the goals, speaks to you. I'm always talking about the goals must be dissolved. You have to let go of, you can't set a projection of the past into the future. Your goals need to be abandoned. You'll be given something. Firstly, the purpose is theosis anyway, to go to Him. But of course, Christ Himself, if you are moving towards and becoming Him, naturally, He saves. So you will have another purpose. Everyone has a providential purpose, something that can help everyone. It doesn't need to be massive, but your talents will be used. And it will be the most meaningful life with Him. But this goal setting can hold you back, these goals and life plans. So this is why in Unseen Warfare he talks about set no plans, because you don't know divine will yet. We're going through this process so we can disclose divine will. The whole right, everything. Everyone's talking about trying to solve our problems. How do you know? It's all arbitrary intellect. You don't know what there is such a thing as divine will. If you really want to fix or save things, it's only resurrection that can do it, and only through trusting in not just trusting that He's going to do it, but what he wants you to do for it. To single-mindedly be focused on this process so you can disclose intuition, disclose divine will, and be able to ask questions, which is what this lecture series has been about. If you want to solve the problems, maybe we have to stop thinking we, or the humanistic, luciferic, and combined civilizational intellect actually has the solution, rather than has to be sacrificed. The coin of civilization has to be sacrificed for the resurrection from divine will. No, it's not going to be you or us. Him through you. Get it around the right way. It's too much. Wilse Macht, it's me. No, you're going to lose. We're all going to lose doing that. No. Conquer, warrior, juvenile. And you realize that once you get old enough, when the testosterone replacement and the amphetamine use isn't possessing you anymore, then you'll think, maybe there might be something to this. What Scott's talking about. But anyway, I'm jumping a bit into Vilsamak there, but sometimes it's important to talk about. But anyway, this payment, one after another, the same order in which they're formed. Now, Thomas Aquinas and mystical union. So symbols of purification again. This payment of coins as a matter of objective conscience, destiny, and sin, ennobling the lower nature, can last an instant, an hour, or decades. And this is so important. It's this is why it's so important, as Steiner talks about, as Valentin talks about. It's just, you just do it. Of course, if you're doing all the practices, it'll come about in a natural, reasonably understandable time frame. But you got to let go of that. You got to let go of how long it's going to take out. It's so hard for being a Westerner. It's easier for the Eastern European. How long? I'm putting all this time in. There's nothing more. You just have to, firstly, I've talked about this many times before, but you just have to do, of course. Just do, make it a part of your life, daily practice, and just do. Because that's a grasping of the Vilsamacht of having a predictable outcome that the intellect can operate a procedure and it will get what it's after and get what it went for. No, you've got to surrender that. It's becoming. Surrender yourself to Christ, who is your true future and end. Got to get rid of this the juvenile hero. Jung talked about it as well. The juvenile Siegfried must die in this process. And that's this coins. So a payment as a matter of objective conscience, destiny, and sin can last an hour or decades. With St. Thomas, it took the time of a single ecstasy. With respect to St. Thomas, it was probably at the end of 1273 that he underwent the decisive ecstasy. If you believe these accounts, of course, but I do. I trust them and trust Tom Berg as when he talks about them. He's a key citation for this. It lasted so long that his sister, with whom he was staying at the time, became concerned and thus questioned Brother Reginald, who said to her, "The master is often caught up in spiritual rapture when he contemplates anything, but I've never before seen him taken out of his senses for so long." And so after about an hour or so, Brother Reginald went to the master and tugged hard at his cloak, finally woke him out of his sleeping contemplation. He said with a sigh, "Reginald, my son, I reveal to you something in secret, forbidding you to reveal it to anyone as long as I live. I have come to the end of all my writing, because such things have been shown to me, such that all I have written and taught now seems to me very insignificant. And this leads me to hope in God, that as I come to the end of my teaching, so very soon will I come to the end of my life." And there's the citation for where it is. So this is a case of the passage through the sphere of swords. St. Thomas Aquinas arrived at the spiritual poverty which is necessary to become a cup and scepter, to become a receptacle for the revelation of He who is, of being, and the I am, and the I don't like using that. You can use it for teaching. That's okay. The I am. He is that. Well, anyway, it's a bit confusing. That's why I've talked about before. I am is as a word is resistant to its use to. None of us can say I am that I am. It can be used in teaching, but there's a reason why you don't use it in worship, because only He can truly say it and it be meaningful, because I is resistant to its use in any other way. So I can't call you I, for instance. The language itself resists it. And so, revelation of being, and then to become an active cooperator in divine will. So no, not just the calm waters, but the breath, which only Christianity truly has, with the beatific vision. And so the worlds or spheres or coins, swords, cups and scepters corresponds to the degree. Oh, sorry, I missed a bit there. It means to become an active cooperator, which means to say initiated. The worlds or spheres of coins, cups and scepters corresponds to the degree of the traditional way of preparation, purification, illumination, and perfection. Factio unio mystica. 1. When one acquires through observation, study, reasoning, and discipline, what one acquires through observation, study, reasoning, and discipline constitutes the degrees of preparation, or the world of coins, which you could say the surface sphere of facticity, actuality, or the thought regime, as I've often called it. 2, this world exposed to the action of the breath of the real, which is actually faith, constitutes the degrees of purification, or the world of swords, or the sphere of formation, which is growing and granting of faith, which is like a real being, substance. It's not just this. It also, almost a symptom of it is certainty, but it's so much more than that. 3, that which remains after this trial becomes the virtue or faculty of the soul to receive illumination from above. This is the degree of illumination, or the world of cups, the sphere of creation. Or you could say that's also connected with, there's a bit of spectrum here. It's connected with emanation as well, because gnosis being is sort of connected with light or illumination and the receptive. This also similarly corresponds to YHVH. Y being union, mystical union, H being illumination, V being purification, and H the final synthesis. So it's like mysticism, gnosis, miraculous, and philosophical, hermetic philosophical, which you could say is like the ideas, right? The final synthesis at stage at the end of hermetic philosophical is the dominant thought understanding of human logos, or simply the final synthesis of where we are after those different steps from the ground of the origin of the world, which is actually mystic at its depths, which is disclosed through this process of concentration without effort in prayer. It's at the essence of the psyche and the ground of the world at the same time, which is why you're doing the concentration. You're going within, and you're into the ground of the world and the ground of entity and ecstasy, ground of the psyche, ground of the world. And so when you're doing this concentration, make no mistake, you're going to the essence of things, being taken to the essence of things, which is He. And that becomes clear in the process. You're not going to some object. No, because eventually that's where it becomes clear how this creation is kept in creating in this, and how it continues to right now, how it was made as well, with the preparation as well. And so I digress a bit there, but lastly, to the extent that the soul raises itself from receptivity, the passive to active cooperation, passive active with the divine, it is admitted to the degree of perfection, or the world of scepters or wands, the sphere of emanation, or its summit, which is mysticism as well, which is love, faith, hope, love. Purification, illumination, union. Anyway. And so that should also help articulate the process a bit more. We were talking about the oaths of poverty, obedience, and chastity. They also relate to those things. And so we talked about the essence of things, the mystery of joy. Now we go deeper into what that is with the holy cherubim. Holy animality and bestiality of instincts and their purification, but also the fourfold joy from the one river out of Eden. The first living creature was like a lion, the second creature like an ox, the third living creature had the face of a man, and the fourth creature was like a flying eagle. Revelation. Ezekiel stresses the fundamental unity of the four living creatures by saying, as for the likeness of the faces of the four living creatures, each had the face of a man or angel. In front, all four had the face of a lion on the right side, all four had the face of an ox on the left side, and all four had the face of an eagle at the back. Ezekiel. Those who understand Heidegger, or even the ancient understanding of the four elements, the fourfold, we'll see some reflection in this. When looking to the essence of things. Each reflect each other, each are entwined with each other. That's a bit Heideggerian. Each mirror each other. You never find the one without all four, without the other four. At least here, at least in temporality, because beyond that, you get out of the elements, so to say. But the four cherubim symbolize and are the movement immanent in basic instinct. That's one thing they symbolize and are. Or what the ancient called the four elements: fire, air, water, earth. But they're not chemical substances or even states of matter, namely warmth, gaseous, liquid, or solid. They're not those things, but rather modes of movement immanent in all substance. Mental, psychic, organic, and also inorganic. Immanent in. This is also true of near the essence of the psyche, the subject as well as the object. So the principal Lord is found manifested in the ineffable name of God. He's manifested in the name, the tetragrammaton, Yod He Vau He, the imprint of God on who is YHVH. So the name is also an imprint of it, because the name itself isn't the thing itself, but on a cosmic scale, the imprint on a cosmic scale constitutes the quaternary in question. So the cherubim are his imprint. These four fundamental instincts immanent in the world and movement are reflections of those then cosmic cherubim. Subjectively, these are felt as differing joys. Now we're getting somewhere, at least phenomenologically. The elements on this side. And so a way of considering the quaternary, the cosmic quaternary, is why one spontaneous impulsion from the eternal point of potentiality and the synthesis of the other three in potentiality. 2, reaction, movement, the reception of. Also mystic, and with the first 1, 2, gnosis. 3, miraculous, which 3, V, transformability and formation, and 4, foldability, enfolded. And you can see how that corresponds to Y, fire, angel, like I said, point of potentiality, synthesis. H, reaction, movement, which is eagle, transformability, formation. V, 3, which is water and lion, and H, 4, foldability. They correspond. They're not the exact same thing, but H, 4, foldability, enfoldment, bull. And 2 is air. It also corresponds there. Corresponds doesn't mean is, though. So, but these 4 words do capture what they all end up being in their different correspondences. Again, it's seal. Like a seal is imprinted. The divine name is imprinted in many different ways across all different phenomena. It doesn't express itself exactly the same way, but it's in all different phenomena. But you see it reflected in many, as I'll just describe. So they're found here both in intellectual activity and in psychic and biological activity, both in so-called inorganic matter and in organic matter, both in the macrocosm and in the microcosm. In temperaments, sanguine temperament, I can't remember the exact list of temperaments, but the Lord's imprint is everywhere. Also in our category of causality and how we make sense So, but consider the word imprint isn't mode. It's a press, like I said, or reflection of him, which is in temporality. It's an echo, like the name YHVH in human knowing is an echo of the name itself. The speaking of the name itself is a reflection of the being, not the being himself, though in understanding primordial wording, there is a correlational something of him with it in the speaking. There's a evaluative power that has been sent with it. He is in the sending too. But the only total separation has occurred now as it's happened to us. But you see this also in the four causes that correspond here to the effective cause, the material cause, the formal cause, and the final cause. And so, in terms of life, the elements are modes of joy. Life at the ground of the world, the elements are modes of joy. It is joy that moves. Joy is the essence of what lives. Life is joy, friends. At the heart of all that lives is joy. And if one knows the essence of life, the essence of the world, one has Nietzsche's joyful wisdom. But as we'll find out, there is joy and there's joy. As we found out last lecture, there's joy and then there's joy. Joy is inherent in the current of life under the world's phenomena. It is the river flowing out of Eden to water the garden, which divided and became four rivers. You can see it corresponded in Genesis. And so the ancient Greeks named that river, which divides itself into four branches of vital or ether, vital, unconscious, ether, vital, vital, which is part of the vital and also sometimes called the vital body, but vital unconscious. It's underneath world, it's underneath the subject. It's underneath the senses. And you see that in this process, which is divided into four elements: fire, air, earth, and water. There's also a connection here with, well, actually maybe not. Well, yeah, quintessence, but quintessence is not the undivided water, but rather what comes to unite them. And so the four elements, which will expand the phenomenology of what they are as joys, shortly, the four cherubim, the reflection of them, we will put this in several ways. One, the joyous motive impulse, the angel of the ideal. Ideal, that's a bit of a Platonic word, but of the end, of the future, which is what spirit issues from. This ideal, this eternal, but not what we think an ideal is. Again, it's it's outside. So the motive impulse from ideal. Two, the enthusiasm for ascent and freedom, which is the eagle. The joy of the ascent of freedom, the creative, vital, combative elan, of the polemical, the joy of that. Joy of preservation and persistence. You can see how that's connected with enfoldment. You can see how they're sort of all connected. So before purification, these are all, but that's the bull, which is the final one. But before purification, they're all in the guise of vital elan, all of them together. So there's a kind of reverse synthesis, a low synthesis of them and how they feel. And you can see combative courage, lion, low lion, Wilsemacht, will to power. And so here's another way of putting it, starting from the end of that. Bull, the joy instinct for the preservation of the species, the preservation and stability of existence, the continuation. 3, lion, vital elan, the joy motivating force of creative evolution, combative courage. 2, eagle, the universal desire for ascent, for liberty. 1, angel, joy that aspires to reintegration with its universal archetype, who are beings. Again, you use the word archetype, one goes, what's that? It's just some thing. No, that's what angels are. That's what Christ is. No, it's that's a word that corresponds to. Sorry, Christ isn't that. He's God and the Father, but he is our where to move towards him. That's all that word means in this context, because that's why I've got quotation marks there to be careful. So he is where we're all going. He's the end of time and what we're all striving towards as the divine. He's the home. We're heading back to the Father's house, and he's the way in love, and which is the human being who is the image and likeness of God, of which all beings are only partial in imperfect manifestations. That's nature, is the truth of all nature, is an imperfect and partial a manifestation. But he's the end, the synthesis of the rest. He's the future, peaceful joy, divine love, reunion with the Father, and the final peace, connection. Well, that's at the end of time. But yes, it's of course peace, but it's also connected to final cause from the end. The agent of, you could call it the agent of development and growth, where we're going, where we're supposed to go, the true motive, impulse. But of course, there is a direction. It's not like it's nirvana. No. The divine breath's there to direct us what to do. Because that stuff is just before that's at a lower level, and the divine breath of faith is higher, of course, and ultimately in union, it's a guiding impulse to do something in the world, because the true religion is the religion of saving, not checking out or fleeing upward, as I've said many times. There is a purpose to do here. Our purpose is theosis, but that naturally, because it's Christ, there's the world that, as only Christianity shows, there's treatments all other different religions offer. Only Christianity is the world can be cured. Only Christianity. It's not, they all posit the world's sick, but only Christianity is, no, there's a way, and it's Christ. The world can be cured and fixed. So now through that, you're beginning to see why the phenomenology of the answer being peace and joy and tranquility and joy displays truth, because it's connected to the angel of our fourfold. And we'll see in the next slide why that is. But you're getting a sense now why the phenomenology is that way. Of course, all the saints always talk about it. That's shows you that the Lord and the divine is present. And you could just quote many of them, as I did in the lecture. There are far more than I quoted. But here's shows theoretically why as well. And we'll see from quotes from the Bible also why. And so that peace, serenity, and the joy and the phenomenology, it's a necessary quality to discern truth and marks true intuition. So, next. Oop. Oh, we have a while to go. Oops. Sorry. Okay, here we are. Now we'll see some quotes about that. So the reason why the feeling of truth is peace, serenity, and joy. Or not just that. It's not just that. There are other phenomenology of truth. He who is truth. But that's something that helps us determine. So as we said, there's joy and then there's joy. There's high joy and there's low joy. There's created animality and there's evolved animality. Just like there are strange waters below the firmament and clean ones above. Just like there are derived energy of bios, is what the vitalists are after. And then there's, as described in the Bible, Zoe, which is virginal. So the former had its origin before the fall, and the latter owes its existence to evolution since the fall. Or after, before. So the since the fall is the work of the serpent. There is the animality created by the divine outside, which is nothing more than spontaneous obedience to revelatory action. So the divine word of which the Gospel of John says all things were made. Sorry, there is animality created by the divine word of which the Gospel of John says all things were made through him, and nothing was made with, and nothing that was made without him. John. And of which Moses' book of Genesis speaks in terms of the creation of animals according to their kinds. Which kinds, archetypes, ideal. And on the fifth and sixth days of creation. And so the animality of divine origin is summarized by the four prototypes or kind of holy cherubim. These are bull, lion, eagle, and angel or man. And if one unites these four prototypes in one sole being, one obtains the angel. So the angel of the four is the fourfold. So the angel is the synthesis of the other three. The angel is therefore the prototype synthesis of holy animality, i.e. divine instinctivity or the principle of spontaneous obedience to God. For holy animality means, holy animality means nothing other than spontaneous obedience to God or divine instinct. And so the other instincts, a bit tongue-tied, are due to the evolution of the serpent. That is summarized by the term bestiality. This fourfold of elements we have been discussing can be high or low, and it's their low bestial form which appears to modern man below the phenomena of the world. A simple, unified, creative, vital elan. A mixing of the derivative waters and high waters, which forms a false synthesis which needs to be purified. In this swords, the coin needs to be purified. And that has to happen enough until you can tell the difference. They have to be divided into four through analysis, through preparation, through concentration without effort, until you can notice the difference between the peace, joy, and then others that are connected with joys on their own or with anxiety. This is discernment. Following the saints and what they say about the difference between the intoxicating false Holy Spirit, the devil, and the Lord, and what comes with him. And so the eagle, the divine version of the eagle, is the instinct which leads to the elevation of spirit and of the heart. That's symbolized by the eagle, which iconographic tradition represents as the inspirative principle or channel of divine inspiration of John the Evangelist. And so, properly aimed upward, aimed unworldly, it's the desire for elevation, for freedom, the joy of elevation and freedom. The bestial version of the eagle is the prototype of the bird of prey, and it represents the instinct of aggression and lightning, attack, rapaciousness. It is the eagle of rapaciousness that figured as the inspiring principle on the standard of Roman legions, the lightning with the eagle. It's aimed on the horizontal. And of course, Rome is nothing more than that. They're when they're not a copy of Greece, it really is a worldly, total worldly being. So it's that elevation aimed on the horizontal, where it doesn't belong. And the rapaciousness, it's also the rapaciousness of the consuming curiosity of the intellect for its own sake. And so the bull, the divine version of the bull, is the symbol of the instinct of productive concentration. Concentration without effort. The particular. It underlies the propensity to deep meditation. And it's also the channel of divine inspiration of the evangelist Luke. And so the bestial version of the bull is the degeneration of that. The degeneration of that. It's the concentration of the will on a single thing, rendering the subject blind to everything else. In sacrificing the bull in the Mithraic mysteries, it was not intended that the propensity of meditation be killed, but rather that impetuosity be killed, rage that blinds, that be killed. Its other guise is the motive instinct and joy of preservation, the desire for reproduction and preservation of the species. Or more when that's intoxicating, when it's done for its own sake, rather than, because joy can come after, as we've said many times, in marriage, it's fine. This union is the chief reason, and the joy comes after, with the healthy, reproductive, marital relations. And so the eagle and bull are vertical opposites. They are the tendencies towards the heights and the depths, towards the general and the particulate, towards the comprehensive and the minutiae. That even makes sense a little bit in terms of testosterone, in terms of the particular. But anyway. And so continuing that, the divine version of the lion symbolizes the instinct that can be designated as moral courage. The martyrs were representatives of the lion, and it's the lion as moral courage which is associated with the evangelist Mark in Christian iconography. And so the bestial version of the lion we're very familiar with. There's a strong connection here with the Willzermacht, will to power, combativeness, which is derivative, which is Heraclitan, polemical, fire, war is the father of all. But they're all tied up, the will's tied up with all these things. That just as there's an eagle, there's also a low eagle. So there's a low lion, rather. Ferociousness is the moral courage. Ferociousness is to moral courage, as lion is to capital uppercase lion. The former is a degeneration of the latter. Combative courage, i.e. the desire for heroism, adventure, and struggle, is the bestial mode of it. And so, here's another one. Angel, the divine angel and the bestial angel. High archetype, high prototype, low prototype. And so the evangelist Matthew, according to the iconography, has the angel or man as inspiring companion, which represents the propensity to objectivity. But that can go both ways. So the divine objectivity is manifested, as a small example, in the truthfulness of an epic narrative made by an annalist or chronicler. They care. It's a checking in. It's a loving of all. Is the truly angelic objectivity. But there's objectivity and objectivity. One can be objective, impartial, in taking everything equally to heart. But you can also be objective, scientific, in being, or the English referee, in being equally indifferent to everything. The former is angelic objectivity. The latter is its degeneration, which you could call the demonic. That's the difference between a demon and an angel. It's that of cold, heartless observation. The former manifests itself by means, it's depersonalization. The former manifests itself by means of the instinct that we call conscience. And who's that ultimately, as we keep saying? because the angel is a synthesis of the other three. Is quintessence, really, when you look to it, as quintessence. The fifth element is the angel, is the first. The latter is manifested in what many take to be the scientific spirit, and which truth to tell is only the propensity towards cynicism as a worldview, as a being, as a way, as a mode. It's about doubt. It's a serpentine. It's something that's needed. Well, the method is not necessarily, certainly not the worldview. But it's of the serpent. It's the grinding experimental mode. God doesn't suffer your experiments. He certainly allows you to knock and wait for his answer, but you don't get to experiment with him. Because you're curious. But, so how do we move from this low to high? The three oaths and their practices. But thought of another way, we unite the joyous instincts we've been describing. But also, like we mentioned earlier, it's the scepter. It's the concentrated point, which is a transformation of the coin. It's the pillar, which is the sword. Everything's been purified. And the cup and divine will equals two wills in union. An open cup and the pillar, like a pillar, concentrated, are these four instincts put together. And so the scepter is all these united, it's the cross. So it's a horizontal and vertical united, which is also the scepter, like I'm saying, which is a concentration without effort and prayer, like a pillar, being made into a pillar. So and a cup forms this cup. Those three symbols are in the one symbol of cup, plus a crown, plop, equals a scepter. Two wills in union, that's union, which are related to these instincts. And we'll see how that happens and unfolds. The lion becomes a winged lion. And how? By moving towards the angel. The lion and the angel constitute the other pair of opposites on the cross of man's instinctivity. Here, it's a matter of the transformation of combative courage into moral courage, into the courage of conscience. For the instinct that we call moral conscience is the effect of inspiration on the part of the angel, and it's by elevating instinctual courage, i.e. the desire for heroism, adventure, and struggle, that the latter is united with conscience and becomes the moral courage that we admire so much in martyrs and saints. And the winged lion is the result to be obtained by the procedure signified by the term to dare, which implies moral courage. The lion acquires wings through its conjunction with the angel by the practice of to dare. And the effect of the inspiration of the angel then, which one's daring produces, becomes spontaneous certainty by the practice signified by the term to know. Constant attention to conscience restrains the impulsiveness. And this impulsive being, this impulsive, the impulse being, ness, when you put ness on the end of a word, it usually means being. The impulsiveness then becomes raised to a new plane through its restriction. As we talked about before, this process is like the growth and metamorphosis of a tree. As you raise on the horizontal, you contract on, raise on the vertical, you at the same time, you contract and rise on the vertical, on the horizontal, and then like that, you see? So when you're in your deep contemplative practices, through the restriction of what you're doing in facticity of your action, you expand on the vertical. And then grace granted in you and the world, you also expand what was granted to you in your deep contemplation practices and mysticism through you into the world, you expand on the horizontal and you're growing like a tree in that way. But they interchange. You're going to have to go through contraction as well. So you have to go through the dark night of the soul as well. The lowering and the weakening of the will at the same time for this to happen, because you have to become empty of the desires of the low empirical subject. And so you can see how this is all connected with everything we've been saying in the last 19 lectures we've given. And so raised to a new plane where it has its expansion. This is also alchemy, which is just Christian. It's just theosis. It's just hesychism. There's nothing more going on here, really. It's just theoretical expansion. But it's inner gardening, but it's nothing collaborative, though. There's nothing more going on here than what did the saint in the Philokalia say? If that's, I don't even know how to pronounce that, but he said, unite watchfulness with the breath and the name of Jesus. Really, that is all that's going on in silence. Fundamentally. And then it changes a little later in terms of the heart, which is also in that book, The Attending of the Heart. But it's, really what's going on. And that does all this. Well, it doesn't do it. Christ does it. But anyway, I'm digressing a bit. Let's continue. And so, raised to a new plane. And so the disciplining of impulsiveness, and you doing this by this process that I'm trying to help teach what was granted to me, is also through asking conscience. In this process, asking conscience is asking the Lord, which I've tried to show what the phenomenology of that is. And you're doing that, you're daring to ask, and then you're knowing as well. So you're before you tweet anything, you should be asking him if you should. You see, you're restraining your impulsiveness, and that expands on another. And that's also tied up on another plane. And it's also tied up with concentration without effort, which in prayer, which practices all of this, because you're going constantly in that process. The practice itself is to face temptation. And when you face temptation, that is the practice. And so you practice the 3 oaths in the morning doing that, because the thoughts that come to you are from the bestial nature, are from sometimes the hierarchies of the left that try to tempt you to the things that are connected to the archetypes of the 3 temptations that Christ goes through in the withdrawal, the will to power, turn stones into bread, to the desire to experiment and jump off the pinnacle of the temple, and the synthesis of all those 3 in a kind of 4th temptation, which is its core, which is pride, which we're looking to purify ourselves of by resisting the temptation. And that synthesis of that is mastery, is that once you actually go through this process to attribute it to yourself, it's me, I'm the chariot rider, I'm the ruler, the hegemonic king, I'm the master. No, those that came before him are thieves and robbers. That doesn't mean just past, it's reaching before him pridefully as the master when he's the one that grants all this stuff. And so going through this process, that's, as the saints say, the temptations become more complex as you develop in the spirit. First, you're helped by your guardian angel and but later you start off with the temptations of the body and overeating, and there's different things of the body, right? Then you move on to the temptations from demons, not the hierarchies of the left yet, but the collective egregores. Say on Twitter, say e-right people fighting people on Twitter. You're tempted by doing that, by other people in the world, by the egregores that they're involved with, by the demons they're involved with. Ideologies, that is a demon, and so that demon will tempt you. That's a more complex. That's principalities and powers, but beyond that, then as the saints deal with, you are tempted by the fallen hierarchies themselves as well as you continue to develop. So, but you're protected early on from that. And you're led up. So, no salvation without temptation. Even revelation comes with, or soon afterwards, what's it called? Counter inspiration occurs. So that's why you need to learn discernment, because the counter inspiration will come after or with, or soon after. Right, revelation comes, but soon around it, you still always have to face temptation. And that's why it's so important that we develop discernment and have the epistemic principle, which includes, of course, the epistemic principle includes the spiritual fathers of the past and present, which is the whole point of reading the saints. Anyway, so continuing, I keep digressing here. The disciplining of the low impulse leads to divine impulse through this to dare and to know. And more becomes possible, but it's only in harmony with knowledge due to conscience, which this whole 3 lectures have been about, trying to get you in contact with it so you can restrict your impulsiveness. And you can start this by, of course, just being obedient to, the whole process, you're being obedient to revelation as we know it from the scriptures and from the tradition. But you actually consult objective conscience himself in this process as well, which you're supposed to. You're supposed to try to understand what divine will is for you. As Paul says, that we're supposed to, through the Holy Spirit, know the depth and height and length and breadth of things. I don't know the exact quote, but okay. Keep digressing. And so it is only in harmony with knowledge due to conscience that impulsiveness becomes a legitimate daring. You only become legitimate in your courage, not through your comparative low desires of the empirical subject for your desire for power to defeat the regime. No, you only become through legitimate authority. So legitimate means it's divine will. Then you can do it. You can't go crush someone. Like the reason why the Crusades are legitimate, because they're authorized. It comes from he who is authority. If you're to fight someone to protect yourself, and being Christian doesn't mean you don't protect yourself when bad people come, right? It's just that it's not for the sake of the low empirical subject. It's through this process you do things because you're guided to do them, not because you desire them. But you desire his will anyway, not your will, Lord, but not my will, Lord, but your will. Let it be with me according to your word. My will languishes after your will. Let it be your will. That's what the whole process is trying to discover. And so legitimate daring is when you have authority, which means you've gone through, you're enacting poverty, obedience, and chastity. And you have this spontaneous confidence because it's come from authentic certainty, which is stronger than any rational certainty, stronger than that of the senses. It contains a synthesis of all of them, actually, which includes mysticism, is a big part of it. And so it's a legitimate daring. And following revealed conscience as an action when you've been directed to do something in the world is also a practice of to dare. Because you'll do things like talking about things that people won't necessarily like. Christ, people, that's why the martyrs were crucified. Because the pagan world didn't like it. And so, but you do it, of course, they knew that it was him, that they had to. And because he was with them. There was no question as to the certainty. And so bull, how does the bull turn into the winged bull? Through the precept to be silent. Hesychism, It's not, as many authors interpret it, solely a rule of prudence, but it's a practical method of transforming this narrowing and blinkering obsession, this intoxication instinct, into a propensity towards depth, and correspondingly an aversion towards all that is of a superficial nature. There's as large a world, everyone, there is as large a world and a greater than that of what you can see in the sense world. There is a possibility of what can be revealed of the depth world, greater than the variety of experiences in the world that just has to be earned. And so, an aversion to everything of a superficial nature. The winged bull is therefore the result obtained by the procedure of being silent. That means to say that the bull is elevated to the level of the eagle and is united with it. A marriage, a union of the impetus towards the heights and the propensity towards depth is affected by this union. The marriage of opposites is the essence of the practice of the law of the cross. The bull becomes winged through its conjunction with the eagle by the practice of to be silent. And just as the eagle acquires the constancy and the perseverance, concentration, perseverance of the bull, thanks to the practice of to will, he who is. To be silent is so... And to be silent is the restriction of the will which elevates itself, as we're talking about with the tree just before. Following the law of the cross as a consequence to this restriction, and a restriction of the will, these things are also, you're practicing that every morning through resisting the temptations. So you're wondering, anything that tries to get you to stop doing your practice is part of this. By saying no to that, you are... as happened with Christ in the three temptations, the angeloi come to you after the resistance of the temptation. That is the practice also. So don't chop and change how long your practice is based on never inside the practice, never within the practice make a change in the time of how long it is, unless lives are at stake or something. Never. You set the time and you do it until the alarm goes off. That's the point of practicing this. Don't go, I'll try to get to an hour and then stop at 45 minutes. No, you set the time and you do it. If you want to make a change, if there has to be a change, then you do that the next day, not inside a practice, because you're practicing. The things that come to you, whatever they may be, all the thoughts that come to you are temptations. We're knowing them all. We're thinking no to all of them. Anyway, but that's in a different lecture. We deal with that. But that's the point of this. It's the restriction of the will. Following the law of the cross, it has an expansion on another plane. So that resistance of temptation, that restriction of the will in being silent, there it becomes the true to will. And so you see in that, in the cherubim, and how instincts become divine. How it's connected to concentration without effort and all the practices we talk of, but they're articulated and expanded theoretically. And so I hope that's been helpful. Go to my lectures on the practices of Christian mysticism. There's a shorter video, which is a clip from that, which is the most overlooked practice in Christianity, concentration without effort. And this concentration is talked about in the book Unseen Warfare. Lorenzo talks about it, and that book is edited by two Orthodox saints. So get started. I'll go across, read your questions, join the fellowship, become a member, and we'll have a discussion now in the Discord. But feel free to say something in the chat, and I'm about to go read it. But we will have a talk in the Discord for anyone who's online about whatever's going on, about this, whatever questions you might have over there for a video or simply only an audio talk. and join the fellowship to be a part of that also. I hope this has been helpful, friends. I'll jump over and have a look at the chats. Okay. Native Michigan Ojibwe. Kind of sounds like my culture, the 7 great teachings from the great-grandfather, aka God, some natives call great-grandfather. Yeah, the saints talk about it in the sense that there are some reflections of truth, but this is, my friend, ultimate truth. That's not to say the ancestors aren't in the collective unconscious or whatnot. Those things become integrated. But ultimately, Christ says, my friend, we don't rest in the bosom of Abraham or these ancestral principles, or Odin. He is before any of these ancestors were, as historical archetypes. I am, Christ says. He is beyond that. He is the eternal outside of everything, outside of temporality itself, ingressing. And he came to save everyone, every culture. He will, and you see in Orthodoxy that there could be a Native American Orthodox church, for instance, that will help, that integrates an ethnos. Because that's what you're talking about, is an ethnos. It's perennialism isn't legitimate. Orthodoxy quite well has a ethnic element that integrates into a church, and so that could be so in some far future for Native Americans to have a element of that ethnos. Well, I wouldn't even, the Native Americans are the Anglos who went there. Sorry, man, you're on the wrong channel if it comes from there. But, there are reservations and such, so you guys could have your own, because they're just as native. But because, these things are... Well, anyway, I'm not going to go into those issues, but I'm not even sure this person's still watching. But for those in a reservation, you can have that. That could be something for the far future. There is an Indian, as an Eastern Indian Orthodox church. Anyway, all right, friends, I'll see you over in the Discord. I hope that stream was helpful. God bless you, and I'll wait, tomorrow we've got another IRL stream where we're continuing The Redemption of Thinking by Rudolf Steiner. And perhaps going into the miracles of Christ, but also other things that come up, videos that we've seen, perhaps commenting on the transfiguration of Christ, but either in Sydney somewhere or in the Blue Mountains. I haven't made a decision yet, but a 5-hour stream coming tomorrow for you, talking on these issues. Be there. We'll have 5 hours where we can talk together. But God bless you all. I'll see you next time. See you tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. All right, I'll end this stream now. And I'll see you in the Discord. scottmanning.com/fellowship if